7 points from this particular thing. Diarrhea is a lot of what we do.
773?
Yeah, 773, the clinical correlation diarrhea. Not only at an individual level, in infants or children or people who are having Crohn's disease or anything like that, but also in population level, like you're dealing with a population that's struggling with cholera. So you need to understand these things. You need to understand, I'm not going to ask you specifics about like what's the definition, how many milliliters of fluid are you losing. You need to understand the 4 major classifications of diarrhea, right, which are osmotic, secretory, structural, and primary motility disorders. And then going further down, they talk about the difference between osmotic and secretory diarrhea. Osmotic means that the luminal conditions are hyperosmotic, and that goes back to your osmosis, where if you have more concentration of solutes in the lumen and fewer in the intestine, you're going to flood the intestine with liquid. This happens when you have secondary malabsorption going all the way back to the very beginning of 417A. If you have secondary malabsorption, you're not taking solutes in through those enterocytes. You can get a buildup of lactose, you can get a buildup of glucose, you can get a buildup of galactose, of soy proteins, all kinds of things which raise the total solute concentration in the lumen. When that happens, you flood the lumen with water because you're trying to equalize inside and outside, and then the stool gets watery. And that's osmotic diarrhea. Secretory diarrhea is either increased intestinal secretions or failure of distal reabsorption of normal secretions. This is more often caused by bacteria or viruses. It's a disruption of what should be going on because the cells have been attacked and altered in some way so they can't do their jobs. Okay, and then there's this interesting thing about bacteria's, activate intestinal adenylate cyclase. Big picture, okay? Big picture about what's the difference between osmotic and secretory diarrhea. Osmotic, we're standing water in because of the luminal concentration difference. Secretory, some sort of pathogen has caused something to increase secretion of mucus and or decrease resorption of water due to some, in this case, activation of adenylate cyclase, but due to some other cause. Okay, and then I want you to know about the fact that diarrhea can cause electrolyte and acid-base imbalance. So that's not only because you're sending that, remember where water goes, sodium and chloride go to, right? So you can send sodium and chloride out with the diarrhea, but also if you're sending a ton of water out, you can change the blood electrolyte imbalance because you just start running out of water. Like if you look at, so you can see here that you can cause hypokalemia, hyperchloremia, and metabolic acidosis. If I wanted you to understand the mechanisms behind these things, I would explain them to you in a paragraph and just ask you to answer correctly based on what I gave you. You don't need to memorize the mechanisms behind the hyperchloremia or the hypokalemia, or if you run out of too much water, then you can get hyperkalemia. No, I'll give you that if I need you to know. Secretory, osmotic diarrhea, what causes those two things, and what that has to do with osmosis and electrolyte concentration overall. Okay, anybody confused about what I might be asking you about this stuff? Okay, I'll try to write a little blurb. All right, and then our other, going into 35. So 35 is osmosis.